Hey, it's Andrew Huang. I am at the NAMM show. I'm gonna hunt around for all the most exciting music gear that's gonna be dropping later this year. I'll put a few little mini reviews of everything at the end of this video, but I think what I really wanna do is record with everything and try and make a track with it. Of course. Okay, let's go.
The Andrew Huang.
How's it going?
Dude, I was literally just talking about with my girlfriend about this. We were just talking about him, right?
Me too.
I've been enjoying your videos.
Oh,
I really love your video.
How you doing? I was just watching your interview.
Nice to
How's it
meet you.
going?
Hey! Oh, well.
All the stuff going on.
Big fan of yours, right?
Yeah.
There we go.
Sorry to
break.
All right, 2 days just went by like that, and real talk, this challenge is really gonna be a challenge. Probably every 2 to 5 minutes, someone was coming up to say hi, which was really lovely, met so many great people, but it did prohibit me from spending as much time as I wanted collecting sounds and really getting to know all the instruments. I think I still got enough samples that I can make something. Spoiler, I had enough samples that I could make something. Actually, all the music you've been hearing in this video was made using just sounds I recorded at NAMM. Have another listen and then I'll break it down. My friend Dan, and I was just gonna explain, he wanted to hear something that I've been working on. I was gonna explain what happened with this NAMM track. Yeah, that little chord chop is a mellotron. The bass is from a Eurorack module.
And what are the drums? Are those go-to samples that you...
No, the drum, all this came from NAMM stuff.
Amazing.
The kick is like a kick from something, plus like a doo from a bukla. Plus some third thing. This part that I really like.
Yeah.
That was 2 different notes from qubit chord.
When it goes down an octave, is still the same sample or a different?
No, it's a different sample. So the first phrase, that's one sample that I played in a higher register maybe. This one's definitely dropped lower, but it has this cool vocal formant quality to it.
Yeah, I'll just be the guy who doesn't know the terminology, but you said this word hocketing yesterday?
Yeah, so this is hocketing.
The word, if someone said the word to me, I really would have thought it was like, it meant being pranked in some terrible way.
You've been hocketed.
You've been hocketed. Yeah. Well, we hocketed them and they never came back.
So Dan and I had other stuff to do and I didn't want to bore him with all the details, but I'll show you the other stuff that went into this track. So during that drop section, other than the bass, there are a few other things that I chopped up into tiny pieces. All those sounds were from the Korg Volca modular, the Arturia Micro Freak, and some more of that Bukla red panel. The snare and hat I lifted from the Electron model sample. The risers came from a Verbose modular system. I really like this one little accent effect that I played on the Haken Continuum. That instrument is full of beautiful sounds, but this one also had this delay that was pitched an octave lower than the original signal, which I thought was cool, and then I added my own delay on top of that. And then we have that mellower section of the track where all the drums and bass came from the same instruments I already talked about, but kind of the main instrument is the mellotron that I played some nice chords on. This wasn't the real old mellotron with actual pieces of tape for each key, but a rack mount unit that they now make. And then to flesh this out a bit, I added 3 atmospheric layers. There's this sort of textural thing that I made with the 3 upcoming qubit modules. That instruments, chord, prism, and bloom. I'll talk more about them later. I also took an individual note from the chord module and sequenced it in Ableton with an arpeggiator and a delay and a filter to create this. And then the final element of this track is just some supportive chord stuff. I actually chopped up Cuckoo playing on this beautiful synthesizer that I'd never heard of before, but it's been out for a few years. It's the Waldorf Streichfett, probably butchering that. Has some lovely, wonderful string sounds though. Now I actually checked out and recorded with a bunch of other instruments that just didn't fit in this track. So why don't we move on to review time? Okay, so like I said, these are gonna be mini reviews. We just want to save time. And of course, my focus is on synthesizers and sampling, so let's talk about the big ticket items in that world and who was at NAMM. So how about the Elektron model samples? I'm torn about this one. I don't think I'm really feeling it. It's cool that Elektron is making something portable and more affordable than their other stuff, but it's still a little bit up there for what it is. It's really great that more people will have access to that powerful and creative Elektron sequencing that is really unmatched in hardware, but you can't directly sample into it. You can load samples from your computer. So fun. But if I want an all-in-one portable groove box, I don't want to have to do anything on my computer with it. I want to be out and about and then hear a thing and record it and be like, boop, boop. Yeah, that's my review. I'm severely lacking in sleep right now. Onto the Arturia Micro Freak. The name. I'm pretty into this synth though. I love that a company as big as Arturia is making something so weird. The keyboard is just touch plates. You can't actually press down on those keys. But what you give up with normal keyboard tactile response is that it senses how much of your finger is making contact with the pad. So that adds a different dimension of expressiveness. Other weird things, there are some randomizing parameters for the sequencer. They call them spice and dice. So those are quick ways to create variations on note patterns as well as the lengths of the notes in those patterns. It also has a super broad range of sounds because I think it has 11 different digital synthesis algorithms. I got some pretty punchy stuff out of it. I also really like this grain mode. And Korg is coming out with a whole bunch of new stuff. I didn't get any time with the Volca drum because the Korg booth was where I was getting interrupted the most. Who would have guessed? The biggest booth with the most new synthesizers. I did play with the Minilog XD for a little bit, which sounds really good, and it's basically just, yeah, some improvements on the original Minilog. Nothing groundbreaking, but it's better in several areas. And then this guy, Ivan at Korg, gave me this, which, thank you so much. This is a pretty complex instrument, and yeah, I would not have had time to explore it at NAMM. I've done a no talking, all sounds video on my second channel if you want to just hear how this sounds. Features-wise, though, I'm impressed. This is a very tiny, portable, West Coast modular synthesizer, 50 patch points, recordable motion sequencing on almost every knob. There's lots to explore here if you're into modular, if you're interested in getting started in modular especially. There's just 3 drawbacks that I'll mention from working with it so far. Firstly, there's always got to be a compromise somewhere. When you make something tiny, you gotta deal with a tiny user experience. So here are the little breadboard cables that you use with the Korg vocal modular. She sells seashells by the seashore. These things are fiddly. There's no denying it. The second thing is, even though this is an analog synthesizer, the reverb is digital, and I don't really like the sound of it. It's kind of metallic. West Coast synthesis in general already leans towards metallic-ish tones a lot of the time, so I feel like a more mellow reverb or like a more, maybe a shimmery thing rather than this like metal hallway. That might have been nicer. And then the last thing, and this is major nerd talk, but I just would want more ways to attenuate signals, to have like one copy that I could weaken a little bit to not affect a second parameter as much. There is this one utility module, but yeah, it would just be nice to have more of those. I'm always hesitant to say things like that, like, I wish it had this feature and that feature, because at some point, you know, you're adding to the size or the cost or... Anyway, that's why I'm not an actual review channel. Let's move on now and talk about Eurorack. 2HP dropped 4 new modules, which are all solid, but limited. I mean, they're tiny. My favorite one was the Bell. Really beautiful tones out of that. Here it is through one of their other new modules, Grain. Noise Engineering were showing a beast of a new module, the Cursus Iteratus Persido. That one was super fun to play with. All the crazy bass tones in the track I made came from that module. Essentially, it has 5 different tone controls that all work together to make it sound every different kind of gnarly. Each control has its own envelope, but then there's also this big knob that they called the Master Blaster that controls all of them at once. And then Qubit announced 3 new modules, and I'm pumped about all of them. There's a new version of their chord module that's like twice as many features in half the size. Pretty awesome they managed to do that. Prism is a multi-effect. There's a state variable filter, a comb filter, delay, bit reducer, and maybe another thing that are all mapped in 3D space. So like the amount of effect changes as you 3D. And then Bloom is their new sequencer, which I find really interesting. It lets you create variations of a sequence that you set, and then those variations can branch off into other variations, and you can also hop between the variations at different steps. Seems really cool for creating evolving but interrelated melodies and that kind of thing. And then finally, everyone has been asking me about the new Teenage Engineering modular, and well, they weren't at NAMM. They didn't have a booth. They got a hotel nearby that they invited a few people to. They invited some of our mutual friends even, but they didn't invite me. Boo-hoo. Well, maybe I'll talk with them about that later, or maybe they just don't like me anymore. All right, hope you're having a good day. I'm gonna put that track up on Patreon for all of my patrons there. Peace. Yeah.